Okay, let's see. Let's see if that doesn't wash me out entirely. So I appreciate those of you who are on, and I thank you for joining me here for Cichlids and Coffee this Saturday morning. Wherever you are, I hope you are drinking out of one of these cups. Let's see who we have here. John Larson, KG. Hey, Kevin. Didn't hear back from you. Wasn't sure if you were going to make it. I'm glad you're here. I thought Frosty was hosting a stream. Okay. And looks like Candy's here. Hey, Candy. And Nolan Peralta. Good morning, Ben. Hey, Nolan. And Unfiltered Aquarius is here. Duke City Aquariums. Hey, buddy. Danny. Hi, Danny. You're a loyal viewer. Fishy Biz Aquatics. Hey, okay. John Larson, welcome to the live stream, John. And let's go ahead and get going. Now, just to let you know, during the live stream, if there are comments that are being made, usually I can't be picking them up instantly, because what happens, I get a little bit distracted. So I have to sort of concentrate on the topic, but then I'll go back and scroll back and try and get to some of them. And if I still don't get to some of them, I'll usually pick them up in the next stream, because I do go back and look at the comments that were made in prior live streams, and even under other videos that I post, and also even at the Facebook group, I go back and I check comments. And if something jumps out at me, I'll go ahead and make a comment on it. If it's something that I really don't know anything about, usually I will not comment, or I'll tell you that it's a subject that I'm not familiar with. Sometimes there's subjects about fish that I don't really know much about, so I'll just skip on those. But let's do the normal welcome. I want to welcome all of you that are on today's live stream, and I want to give a shout out to Kevin Green, Dennis Ruel, Denny Ruel, and of course Riddell, and of course the amazing Candi. And for those of you that don't know, Candi had a birthday, so let's all wish Candi a very happy birthday. I believe she is 29, I think, maybe 27. Candi, you can clarify that if you want. And I want to do a shout out to last week's SuperChats, César Sosa, who came in twice, Duke City Aquariums, SoySki, Danny Hoogenboom, who came in twice, and Gurvinder Parmar. Thank you so much, everybody, for the support of the channel. It is noticed and very appreciated. And of course, a big shout out to the international viewers. I believe we had some folks from Singapore, Thailand, the UK. Anyway, people from around the world. I love it. So let's talk a little bit about what's been going on. Did some of you catch Candi on the other side of the camera? She was with KG Tropicals. And Katie, it was on the other side of the camera, giving an interview with Candi was giving an interview with John and Lisa, and I know that maybe this is a little putting you on the spot a little bit, Candi, but can you share the link to that interview? I think folks would want to see that, and that's over at KG Tropicals. John and Lisa doing an interview with Candi, and it was great to see her on the other side of the camera. And anyway, very unusual to find somebody who looks better in person than they do in their icon, and so that was very nice. And I even think her son made a few. I think Caleb even made a few appearances on that one. So little boy with a little ham, very cute actually. So. Let's talk a little bit about what's been going on, apart from Candi's debut as a live on a live stream. Some of you noticed that there was a glitch. There was a glitch in the posting of last week's live stream, and if you this sort of ties into today's subject. If you want to experience tear, upset, frustration as a YouTuber, hit the wrong button and watch one of your videos delete into nowhere, and that's what happened. I ended up hitting in an effort to be efficient. I tried to delete the the original live stream, which was vertical, instead of horizontal. So I tried to delete that one while the real live stream was uploading to YouTube, and I hit the wrong one. And it's not like on a computer where they ask you, are you sure you want to delete this? You get one shot with YouTube, and if you hit that button, that's it. It was gone. And fortunately, my friends over at YouTube Support were able to recover the video and post it and put it back, which is important to me because, like I said earlier, I go back to the earlier live streams and pull from that content and questions and comments, and that's very much what drives the following live stream. So at any rate, that ended up okay. It wasn't until Sunday night that I got the news that they were able to actually get that up there, put it back up and post it. So that was good. There were a couple. Let's see here. A couple videos I posted. Maybe some of you watched it. Did some of you watch? The video. He's going to rip their eyes out. I put a video out on some of the misconceptions about African cichlids, and one of them, of course, is that eye biters. I think this guy right here, eye biters, will go and rip other fish eyes out. And so I posted a video with 5 misconceptions about African cichlids. Some of you watched it. It got a pretty good response. I think it's over 1,000, maybe 2,000 views, which is kind of par for the course on my channel. And sometimes I'll get one that blows up, but occasionally it's usually between 2,000 and 5,000 usually. Got a good response to that one. And also I put out a video on a fluval tip. A fluval tip that's been working really well for me, and what that tip was essentially was just putting a piece of a very quick swap out once a month of a piece of pinky floss in the very top of the fluval, and it's very easy. It was actually more difficult on the video because I took the whole lid off. The truth is you only need to put the lid up just a little bit, reach in, grab that pinky floss, throw another one in there, tuck it in, and close it. It's a very fast swap out, and what it does is it helps keep the biological media below the pinky floss nice and clean, and really helps to keep the gallons per hour pumping the way they should. Really peaked out. The second you fire up a canister filter, and I mentioned this last week, just like the second you fire up any kind of a filter or even a power head, you start to lose gallons per hour as you get a buildup of detritus or mold or whatever it is that builds up in there. Things start to slow down. So once a month, I pull out that sheet of pinky, and it's actually pretty dark, which is surprising because of the water travels through all of that sponge on the outside of an FX, and before it goes up and down the middle, and so it was pretty surprising that pinky gets so dark. And also, I've got that pre-filter on there, and that was the extra tip that I talked about. That pre-filter comes off and gets rinsed with every water change. And I've drilled some holes in the pipe that goes into that sponge, and so that really has helped to use the entire sponge as opposed to just the bottom third of that sponge doing where all the intake or sucking is occurring. Now the entire sponge is being used because of the holes that I drilled. So if you look at the bottom of that black bottom tank, it's black substrate, which shows everything. Just like if you own a black car, every piece of dust will show, and it's perfectly clean all the time. So it's between the power heads moving the waste towards the sponge, and the outputs of the FX6 moving waste towards that input, and so it keeps everything nice and pristine. Now, unfortunately, you can't do that kind of a hack or tweak on something like a Sun, because the Sun water in a Sun canister travels to the bottom of the canister and then up the middle. So to have the same or a comparable effect with a sun, you'd have to go to the bottom canister and put your pinky there at the bottom of the bottom canister tray, and so the water goes up through it before it hits the media. So it would be a considerable amount more work to do that little hack on a sun. If you want to do it the way it's being done on the FX6, you'd have a much more time and labor intensive hack if you were to do it that way. At any rate, that and the drilling of the pipe and the use of the pre-filter has gotten a real good response. I noticed that video is actually picking up steam. It's getting more shares, I think, and I really appreciate when you guys share the videos with folks that you know that have fluval filters. So that's what's been going on. For upcoming videos, do you folks have any topic that you would like to hear me talk about in upcoming videos? Sometimes I like to tap you and see what you would like to hear me talk about. I was going to put out a video on tips for catching fish. That was sort of on the agenda. I had a couple other videos in mind, but if you have a topic that you would like to see me put out in a video, I'm open for suggestions. I'm always looking for new ideas and new content, and I do listen to you. And like I said earlier, I will not comment on a topic that I'm not familiar with, of course, or sometimes what I'll do is I'll go and do research off of one of your suggestions, and that helps me to learn and to get some more information, which is good. So let's get into the topic, which is being a fish keeper and posting your videos on YouTube. And I want to you've probably noticed, if you follow my channel, that a lot of times when I talk about a subject, I talk about it in lists. I think probably my most popular video of all time is a 10 tips video, and I used to be called Ben 10 Tips by somebody. But I think the 10 tips video has 350,000 views or something like that. But I like to make lists of things, and it kind of makes it easy. So I'll give you the lists, the pros and cons. If you're thinking about putting your videos out on YouTube, there's what you see very often, except for maybe an occasional mistake or something, but very often what you see is the polished end products about the polished end product of what gets posted. So it's been edited, it's been doctored, the mistakes have been taken out, and the fact that the video didn't meet expectations and got completely scratched and done over again. You don't see that. You don't see that there was some spelling error that was caught right before the video was about to be posted, so the video had to be pulled down and put back up again. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on that you're never exposed to, that is just background for the YouTubers, and I'm not complaining. If you choose to do this, you take on that responsibility, and so it's part of the game. But I'll tell you some of the cons. Some of the downside of being a YouTuber is that any mistake you make is out there. It's in the public domain, and sometimes people will be understanding about it. Sometimes they'll try and help you through it. Sometimes they'll be considerate, and sometimes they'll just be a-holes about it. And so one of the cons is certainly if you're, and early in my videos, yeah, there were things that I said or did that, looking back on it, I go, that's not necessarily advice I would give today. Like if somebody's looking at one of my like the evolution of plants in a cichlid tank. Man, you have no idea how pumped up I was when I heard a couple prominent YouTubers talk about how Anubias could possibly work in a cichlid tank. Boy, I jumped right on that bandwagon, and I just, I went out and bought a bunch of plants. I put them in, and then I slowly, over time, after posting several videos about how successful it had been and stuff. And then slowly over time, I watched those plants get chopped to bits and basically get shredded and become just a bunch of trash, a bunch of decomposing trash in my tank. And I had to eventually just pull them. And you probably saw that video not that long ago. I give up, where I'm just holding this last little bit of plants, and so when people tell me they're watching all my videos, I usually suggest that they watch the most recent post on a similar subject, because that'll be the one that has the evolved viewpoint. Because as a YouTuber, you're learning as you're posting. And very often, I mean, we're always learning, right? I mean, that's one of the themes of my channel. We all learn from each other. We're always learning. The stupidest fish keeper is the one that thinks they know everything, right? So, hey, thank you, Jose. Thank you very much there, my friend. So, as I go through the evolution, as I go through the learning process, there are times when there's going to be mistakes. It's in the public domain. I think if I go back and delete those videos, it would be disingenuous. It would be a little bit of a fakery. So I don't go back and delete them, even though you could make a case for, well, maybe you should go back and delete them. But I kind of like having my full history and evolution as a cichlid keeper right there in the public. And so one of the downsides of being a YouTuber is, you live in a glass box, just like your fish do. You're in a glass box or an acrylic box like this one, and there's no secrets. You know when I've messed up. You know when my fish have died. You know when I haven't acted fast enough, or when I didn't read or identify a disease or treated a disease incorrectly. You know when I oxygen starved my fish through a stupid mistake. You know about that stuff. It's all out there. So if that kind of exposure, which can lead to actual public ridicule and trolls, if that kind of exposure would bother you and really, really disturb you, and not to say it doesn't disturb me, it does, but I have a pretty fast recovery period. But if those kind of things bother you, then you're going to it'll not be good for you to be on YouTube, because inevitably it's going to happen, and inevitably you're going to have people jump on you about it, and but I'll tell you something, it makes you learn real quick, and so so mistakes and tragedies become public record. That's number one on the downside. Number two is there is time involved. I spend, believe it or not, between 1 to 2 hours just to prepare for this live stream. I'm going back over the live stream. That's a 1 hour live stream. I go back over other videos. I go back over comments. I type up little notes that I can refer to, and a cheat sheet. So then I have 2 other videos that I put out normally during the week. Those take a few hours. So add this to the normal routine of taking care of your tanks, and you realize that you're going to have probably anywhere between 6 and 10 hours a week that you're going to have to be dedicating to not just the care of your fish, but also to YouTube content. And so, and it really depends on what level of YouTuber you want to be. If you want to be someone who just casually throws up an update on your tank now and then, that's different. But if you want to really jump in with both feet, like I've been gradually doing over time, then realize that you're going to have a time commitment, and that time is going to come from somewhere. And in my case, because my kids have grown up, and 3 of them are moved out, 1 of them is back in with us, but 3 of them are gone. So I do have more time. As I'm approaching retirement, I'm going to have more time. If you're real busy, you have a job that requires overtime, you work weekends sometimes, it might not be for you because it's going to be neglected. And one of the other downsides or cons of YouTube is that if you're not putting out content, if you're not staying relevant, if you're not putting out material, and material that is getting a good response, you quickly sort of die out, you fade out. There were 4 or 5 years ago, there were some pretty prominent YouTubers out there. They're gone. You don't even hear from them anymore. Even I'm going to make a sound adjustment here that you folks are going to. Okay. Can you folks hear me a lot better now? Can you hear me a lot more? Is that better? Okay. So, so anyway, there are some YouTubers that just have disappeared, and I don't know, for whatever reason. They became ill, they became sick, something was wrong, and so I don't know what happened to them, but they left. In a very strange turn of events, we had John Hudson, who literally left YouTube for, I don't know, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, I forget how long, and then returned, and then actually became even stronger, even better than he was originally. So that's a real anomaly. I can't think of anybody on YouTube that's actually done that. So you need to be able to deliver relevant information and be putting out information on a regular basis, or you quickly just sort of fade out and get forgotten about. As you grow, another downside to YouTube, as you grow, you are going to attract trolls. Trolls are attracted to anything that's starting to take on success. My theory is that they themselves cannot create much or be successful in many fields, and so they tend to, like a vampire, tend to jump onto areas where there is success and sort of try to suck the blood out of it. And so you will attract trolls as you grow. Just be aware of that. That does happen. And by the way, what you're hearing in the background is my new dog. Some of you know that I lost a dog. I lost Pepper. I mentioned in a stream a while back that I had a dog that was nearing the end of his life. A 15-year-old beagle named Pepper, very sweetest dog in the world, and she finally passed away. And so almost immediately a friend contacted me with a 1-year-old beagle, tricolor beagle pup, that they couldn't keep it anymore because they were in like a setting where the landlord didn't want them to have the dog. And so we went ahead and adopted Jackson, who is a 1-year-old male beagle. And from time to time, he will be making comments during the video, I'm pretty sure, and in future videos. So another downside, which isn't really a downside, you can even say it's an upside in some ways, is that there's going to be cost involved in being a YouTuber. You're going to eventually need a better camera equipment, which is on my list of things to acquire. You're going to need lighting, better lighting, microphones like you see here. You're going to need other things that are going to help you to become a better YouTuber, and that's going to cost money. This phone is sitting on a expensive Joby tripod, J-O-B-Y, Joby tripod, very heavy-duty tripod, and so there's going to be cost involved, and if you want to evolve, and if you look at some of these big YouTubers, you look at Corey over at the Aquarium Co-op, you look at John and Lisa, you look at Zenzo Tozawa, IFG, Joey, the king of DIY. These people have thousands of dollars in equipment, there's no doubt about that. I'm still very much on a budget. So really, that's the downside. And the other downside of it is if you get into it for the money, forget about it, okay? Because you've got to do it because you love it. Because the money might come, but it might not come. So in the very beginning, especially, you're not going to be getting probably anything. You know, you're going to be. I went for months and months and months and months. I didn't get a penny, and so, but I was doing it because I loved it. And so you have to do it because you love it. You have to do it because you like doing it. You enjoy sharing your tanks and your fish you enjoy helping other fish keepers in some ways, and you love the interaction, that's why you have to, and this is my opinion, that's why you have to do it. If you're doing it for fame and for attention and for money and for that kind of stuff, it's I think that's part of it, but it's the wrong. It shouldn't be the purpose or the motivation of doing it. For me, the motivation is to reach you and to be able to make your fish keeping more successful. Also to learn from you. It's not entire. I'm not. I'm not altruistic, right? I do take back. I take your knowledge, what you share with me. I learn from you, and over time, some money has come about from it. But it's probably 1/3 of what you think it might be. Now, you get up over 50,000 subs, you start putting out videos on a regular basis that have over 25,000 views, like your average video. Like I know there's some YouTubers out there, they just put out a, hey, how you doing? And they get 100,000 views. Those people are making $10, $15, $20, $30, $40,000 a month in revenue. So for them, it's that's a very different game. Can someone do that in the fish keeping community? I think Joey is doing it. I think that's awesome, and that he certainly, like he says himself, he came in at a time that we're not even sure if anyone could do that again today the way he did it, because of just where he was in the timeline of YouTube's evolution, and that's a big accolade to him for actually having the foresight. People like Corey at the Aquarium Co-op, he's another one that could actually, and John and Lisa, they could get up into those high income brackets if they continue the way they're doing. And again, but make no mistake about it, they're putting in a lot of hard work, and they've invested a lot in equipment and time and effort to get there. It doesn't come just easily or naturally. Now, let's talk about the upside, the positives of being on YouTube, as Jackson continues to chime in the background. And one of the things I love about YouTube is that you have an ongoing record. You have an ongoing video record of your fish keeping. So you can go back and see a fish that you really loved that, let's say, passed away, and you can see that fish and remember that fish. And you can go back and pick up brand new comments that people are making on a video that you posted 2 or 3 years ago, and be able to respond to people off of old content. And so these are, and so I can go back and see the actual setup of my first cichlid tank and how that went from that 30 gallon to the 60, and from the 60 to the 135, and then from the 135 to the 150 behind me. I can actually watch that evolution, and YouTube is storing all that content for me for free. So you have this in the cloud storage system that's being offered to you by YouTube that you can take advantage of. Even if you kept your videos private, you could use YouTube as your video storage for the evolution of your tanks over time. So I think that uploading is a good idea, just to keep a record of what you've done over time. And the other big plus point is the interaction and the friendships that you make. I would not know Candi. I wouldn't know Kevin. My moderators. I wouldn't know GP or Danny Hoogenboom or Hoogenbottom, but butchering it. I wouldn't know these people. I wouldn't be aware of them, right? I wouldn't be aware of Kevin Green or Danny Riddell or any of these folks if I hadn't started posting on YouTube. So now I have this network of friends all over the world, and that I actually do consider friends, and that communicate with me, and I communicate with them. And that to me is very, very valuable. That to me is sort of the fabric of life, to have these friendships going on around the world. And so that to me is one of the biggest plus points of being on YouTube, is the camaraderie, friendships, and connections that you make with people that you would normally would have never come across. And that to me is very, very valuable. And Soren Albigard, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Very appreciated. Super chatters really help out the channel. And the other thing that that is a plus point of being on YouTube is that it sort of forces you. It forces you in a good way. It pressures you in a good way to stay at the top of your game. You have to keep your tanks pristine. You have to keep your fish healthy. You have to know what you're talking about. So you have to go and study and research a little bit. So it keeps you learning. And you are learning from the comments of more experienced fish keepers that come to your channel and say, have you thought of this? Have you tried that? Have you looked at this product? So that's also very, very important. You get that kind of information. Thank you, Danny. Did I butcher your name? Hoogenboom. I think I got it right. Hoogenboom. Anyway, thank you, Danny. And so that's a pressure that's put onto the YouTuber. And sometimes YouTubers will post a video with a real dirty tank, or they haven't cleaned the glass, and there's a bunch of algae or something, you know, or it's obviously a filthy tank. And you know, I think I came up with a tips video a while back. I said, don't do that. You know, don't do that. Don't. It's like going out. You know, when I was a little kid, and it never made sense to me. My grandma, and my mom, but don't go out with dirty clothes. Don't go out with dirty underwear on. What if you get into an accident? Is that what you're going to worry about? That I have dirty underwear on if a car ran over me? I don't get it. But the point being is, don't put things out into the public domain that just looks dirty. So what that does is it gets you to pay attention, stay at the top of your game, and really do a good job. Because if you don't, the community will know, and you can't hide it. You know, even like, let's say a fish dies and you remove them, and you know, in the next video, someone's going to say, hey dude, where's your polystigma? What happened to your polystigma? You know, and now you're sort of like, So anyway, so you got to really be on top of your game. That's good. Now, final plus point of being on YouTube, apart from learning, studying, being under pressure of staying at the top of your game, another plus point is this. If your channel starts to take off, you will have a side hustle that you love that will make you money. So imagine, I mean, you love fish keeping anyway, otherwise you wouldn't be spending a Saturday here. You love fish keeping. Talking about fish keeping, taking care of your fish, doing these kind of things with a camera running, and now you're making money doing it. And that's a great side hustle. To me, that's more appealing than driving Lyft or Uber or doing. And I'm not knocking Lyft or Uber. I love Lyft. I love Lyft. But this for me is like I love this little side hustle. It does make me a little bit of money, and so the final plus point is this: is if you do take off, if it does make it, if you put out good content, if you listen to your viewers, if you learn about thumbnails and you learn about how to use the right tags, and you promote your channel correctly through the right channels, you'll start making some money. And when that first little $50 or $100, you know, hits your account from, you know, Google AdSense because of the people that watched your videos, you're going to go, woohoo! You're going to be all so excited, you know. And I certainly was, because it's like, hey, here's some fish food money. My hobby's paying for itself now, and that was very, very exciting to me. And so that's a plus point, I think. Now somebody just posted something, Ecuador Deep. I have no idea what that says. If somebody can translate that and let me know what it says, but not if it's something mean or nasty. It's got a smiley face, so I think it's going to be okay. All right. So if you have any questions about being a YouTuber, please go ahead and post them. I will go ahead and either try and pick up some of them now, or go ahead and review them and pick them up next week. But I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have about being on YouTube and putting content out and I'll be happy to go ahead and go over that with you. And so let's move on to my favorite section, my favorite part of this live stream, and I want to. This is just some of the comments that were from some of the prior videos. And Aquador Deep, you're Swedish. Okay, I get it now. All right. My son spent time in Sweden. He loved Sweden. Okay, so these are some comments that were made in either the last live stream or also from some of the comments made under the video. But Jamie Saint Amand, I think this was in response to me putting a plug in for this mug. I was putting a plug in for the channel mug, which, by the way, if you use the link or if you use the code livestream, one word, livestream, you do get 10% on all products at the Teespring. Teespring appears underneath all my videos, and you get 10% off if you use livestream as a code. Jamie said I have a 34-ounce mug for coffee. So Jamie, this mug is not for you, my friend. First of all, let me say that you are my coffee hero. And of course, you can always refill this a couple times. All right, Cunningham Cichlids. He said that he does the same. He mixes a bunch of great foods together for daily feeding. So what James over at, what Josh, what Josh was talking about over at Cunningham Cichlids, which, by the way, I have a great fish in my 100 I got from Cunningham. I'll show him in an upcoming video. He is a beautiful torpedo. They call him a torpedo cichlid. You can Google that, torpedo cichlid. Beautiful fish. I got him from Josh over at Cunningham Cichlids, who I had the pleasure of meeting at the American Cichlid Association meeting in Houston. And great guy. So I do the same. I mix a bunch of great foods together for daily feeding. We were talking about feeding and how I don't think any one food producer really has it all figured out. And so what I do is I mix sort of this little witch's cauldron of food, and it has just a variety of energetics, which is mysis. It has norphin pellets. It has cobalt probiotic predator pellets. It has some Syrah, that German high quality Syrah food. It has a little bit of some extreme cichlid pellets that I was able to pick up from James Largo over at the Cichlid Shack. And so it has just a mix, and that's what I feed them, and it drives them absolutely crazy when it's time to feed them. When they see the jar, I mean, I can walk by this tank 50 times, but if I walk by it and I'm holding the jar, they go insane. So they know these fish are a little smarter than I think we give them credit for. So César Sosa, my friend César Sosa. So I'm feeding bug bites from Fluval. I've been trying Northfin and Cobalt, but my cichlids don't pay attention. What can I do? I'm not really sure if that means that they're eating the bug bites, or not eating the Northfin and the Cobalt, or if they're eating the Northfin, the Cobalt, and ignoring the bug bites. Here's my take on that. You know, as a group, fish keepers, and I've seen this, and maybe I'm as bad as everybody else. We tend to follow trends. It's almost like there's a fashion that goes on in the community. There was a predator hat craze that was going on a while back. There was right now you could even say there's a pre-filter craze going on. There's a anyway, so there's fashion, there's innovation, there's things that come into the hobby, and people kind of chase it a little bit. And here's my advice, for whatever it's worth. If something is working for you, and you have healthy fish, they're active, they attack their food, Their fins are spread out. They're not collapsed. They're not hiding 24/7. If your fish are healthy, doing the things they should do, they look good. They have good color. You don't need to follow any trends. You don't need to follow any kind of fish fashion. Okay, because that new food that's walking down the catwalk might not be right for your fish. They might not like it. So try it. If they like it, good. If not, if your fish have been healthy up to that point, forget about it. Give it away. Throw it out. Just don't. You don't have to. There are a lot of innovations coming on, and some of them are great. Some of them are just that. They're just sort of fashion, and I included. We do tend to change up things just to kind of stay relevant, and that's another thing about being a YouTuber. You're always trying new stuff, and just to share it with people. And sometimes if things are working, you're better off just leaving it alone. Don't mess with it, and don't do what your Uncle Ben said, because. But I mix my food, and that works for me. I also give them a treat, okay? And maybe they don't know the difference. Maybe it's kind of stupid on my part, but I like to give them a treat every now and then. I gave them some frozen krill, which they love, and they run around with a piece of krill in their mouth. Looks like they're smoking a cigar. It's hilarious. I give them, and I also give them the omega-1 cubes, cichlid cubes. Every now and then I'll throw some of those in. They love those. I also use those for finicky fish who are having a hard time eating. So Duke City Aquariums, I swear some of my peacocks, Duke City Aquarium says, I swear some of my peacocks aren't growing and they seem to be actually shrinking. I'm not sure, Duke City, if that's possible. I mean, they can certainly shrink in the stomach. Maybe they can lose fat. They can become leaner. I don't think length would change. You might be experiencing the optical illusion that your other fish are growing, but maybe one or two are growing slower, which is normal. And so it seems like, by comparison, it seems like that one fish is getting smaller. Like if I was to have just a bucochrome, let's say I put a bucanono and a venusus, and I just had those two fish, I might think that buco is getting smaller because the venusus is growing like an inch every month, So maybe you've got an optical illusion going on. I don't know if they're shrinking. They can definitely lose body mass if they're not eating, or if the food that you're using is low in fat. Believe it or not, you do need some fat content in your fish food. Just like us humans, we need fat in our food. It's just a fact, a fat fact. Sean E., have you ever used SeaChem Pristine? Yes, I have, Sean. And I liked it. I was just setting up a tank, and you know how you can get this new tank syndrome. You get a little bit of an algae bloom. You get a little bit of, you get some fogginess when you're cycling a tank, and it was hanging around a little bit too long, and so I put some Pristine in, and I think SeaChem Pristine is a natural bonding agent, and particulates, anything floating in the water will bond with it and then go into your filter. And I used it, and my water became, like the name implies, the water became pristine. And it is, from what I understand, totally an organic product. It's not necessarily what you would call chemical filtration. And so I think it did a very good job. My tanks have all cleared up. They're all running up very, very clear, as you can see, without any chemical filter. No, I don't use any chemical, no charcoal, no Pristine, nothing right now. So, but when I did use it, it did the job, and I did like it. I think SeaChem puts out good quality products. Johnson Hull, other than pH and nitrates, what other conditions are important for cichlid health? I'll be moving my fish to a place that doesn't have as high of a pH as I do in Southern California. For those of you that don't know, Southern California puts out what is called liquid rock. Our water in Southern California is very hard, and it's very good for cichlid keeping. And but this is a bit unique. In other parts of the country, the water is much softer, and there's a lot less calcium and magnesium in the water, which makes it less optimal for cichlids. So certainly putting in limestone in decor, using a aragonite substrate, using real holy rock, things like this can help if you're going to move to areas like that, to help add minerals and stabilize your pH. When you don't have minerals in the water, you can get your pH can fluctuate. If I understand this correctly, and you correct me if I'm wrong, the minerals help to neutralize nitric acid, which is basically nitrate, is being neutralized to some degree by the minerals that are in the water. So if your minerals are less because you live in a softer water area, or if you're or if you haven't done a water change for a long time and those minerals have sort of settled down or no longer in the water column, you can have a shift in pH that can be very distressful for your fish, which is another reason why water changes are so important in my mind, not just for nitrate control, but for adding minerals to the water, in particular calcium and magnesium and other trace minerals. I do use Malawi lake salt, and Malawi lake salt is not salt like Epsom or kosher salt, which would be good to use. Let's say if you're treating the tank or you'd like to put a little salt in. Malawi lake salt by Seachem is just trace minerals. It adds some of the trace mineral compounds in the right ratio that you'll find in Lake Malawi. Something I've been doing, my fish have been doing well, so I'm going to keep doing it. Do you have to do it? Would it make it a bad thing if you didn't? I don't know. I don't think so, maybe. But I've been doing it, and I've been having good results with it, so I keep doing it. And I don't dose at the level they recommend, because that would run through 2 or 3 large bottles a month. I use probably a third of the dose just to have some of those trace minerals floating around, which they take in through their gills, through their skin. That's how they mineralize themselves. So that's very important, I think. So watch your trace minerals. Use limestone and aragonite to help with your pH if you're moving to a soft water area. Stay on your water change schedule. Use good quality food that isn't full of dyes and fillers. Just good fish husbandry, just the usual stuff, really really service your filters the way you're supposed to. Alternate between filter servicing so you don't do a big, massive beneficial bacteria kill-off. Just the usual stuff, and you'll do fine. Johnson Hull. Chevy Fish. Chevy Fish, who was here early today and is going to catch the replay because he had to leave. I am glad you kept the plants in your tank. Your fish really seem to be more at ease. Chevy Fish is talking about these and these. These are plants that I picked up from Elite Cichlids. Elite Cichlids. If you contact them and you talk to Mike or you talk to Jack at Elite Cichlids, tell them you want the BEN.O.CICHLID discount. I think it's Ben 10 or something like that. Tell them you want the discount. But I love having these plants, and I'll tell you why. Color. I love the color. Second, I like the fish being able to go into an area where they're out of view, so they can hide sometimes and catch their breath if they're in a chase. So they can, it kind of breaks up the line of sight, as do the large rocks that I picked up from Universal Rocks in Houston. And back in the day when Jay Wilson used to work with them. And so I like having them there. And I like the way they move around and with the filter and stuff. And I enjoy them. I know they're fake. And years ago, I used to hate fake plants. I used to say, why would people keep fake plants? They're fake. It's like going to Disneyland. You know, deep inside, nothing's real. Blah blah blah. Now, I don't care now. I just love the way they look. And the people over at Elite, they do a real good job at Elite Cichlids in trying to make the plants realistic. And my only complaint is that what makes them so nice, the fact that they're very bushy and they float around, and the part that makes them so nice is also what makes them, is the downside, because if you get a little bit of algae growing on them, they're a bit difficult to clean because they have a lot of detail. And so the best thing about them is also the worst thing about them. But I have found that with a soft brush, I just get in there and I just brush them off. And they also suggest you can put them in a light bleach solution, pull them out, float them in some bleach, a few tablespoons in a 5-gallon bucket or something. Let them sit overnight, then give them a good water rinse, and it'll be safe. It'll be safe to put back in. The Cichlid Shack. Cichlid Shack said, this is James Largo, "Hey Ben, look for the orange in the anal fin. That's the first sign of a male in a hawk." I was talking about how the hawk in the tank behind me has been fooling me for years, making me think that it's going to be a male with occasional flashes of color. And I am absolutely convinced, especially after that comment, I've never seen a single sign of color or orange in the anal fin of that hawk. So I think that hawk is going to go onto the sales block. I'm going to be putting him in Craigslist, or I might be breeding him with the confirmed male that I picked up from James. I have a confirmed male in the 100, who's about a third smaller than the female. I'm not sure if a female hawk will kill a male hawk, but maybe I'll try breeding them in the 30, which is usually my quarantine tank, but right now it's empty. So maybe I'll try and breed them and I'll get little hawks. We'll see. We'll see. But thank you for that, James. I do not see any orange in the anal fin of this fish back here. And but she is a big, impressive female, I'll tell you that. So I think I might breed her. Maybe I'll do that. Okay, the Czar. This is a person called the Czar, Z-A-R. "Do you think 2 Eheim 2217 filters are enough for a 90-gallon peacock and hap tank?" So I'm not familiar with Eheim filters. I've heard wonderful things about them. I've never used one personally. I've used Eheim heaters, and I thought they were battleships. I thought they were great, but I've never used their canister filters. The 2217, I did a little bit of research just because of your question. The Eheim 2217 Classic, it's rated for aquariums up to 159 gallons. So they're saying that one of those could do a job on 159 gallon, has a maximum flow rate of 264 gallons per hour. So by my standards, and I think the general consensus within the cichlid community, especially if you're heavily stocking your tanks, you're going to find that that's a little bit light. 2 of them will give you 528 gallons per hour. I don't know, does Eheim rate its GPH after it's been filled with media, or do they rate their GPH, their gallons per hour, while the filter is empty? Do you know? At any rate, I think with you're going to need more turnover. That's my opinion. I know that GP, I know that he was saying that was enough. I personally would probably put a bigger canister on there with more GPH, or maybe I'd put those 2 Eheims and then complement it with a nice hang-on back. A nice, an Aqua Clear, or maybe a big Marine Land, one of the new Marine Lands, which look pretty good, the dual bio wheels. That's just me. I think I like to be within 5 and 10 times the amount of gallons that I'm filtering. And so that's just me. So I would put more on there if you're gonna, especially if you're gonna heavily stock. If you're gonna stock heavily, for sure. So Mark's Aquatics 93 watching. Hey, we might hit 100.
Share the live stream. Let's see if we can get over 100. Gabriel Equehua. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Gabriel. Equehua. What's the first signs of a male eye biter? The two young eye biters I had before turned out to be females. So I never really saw signs that they were males. Perhaps somebody like James or Josh, if you're on the stream, perhaps you can address that, the first signs of having a male eye biter. I imagine blue in the face, blue around the gills. I imagine a pointed anal fin, things of this nature, that would be some of the things that you would look for as the beginning signs. Some people say attitude. Does the fish have a lot of aggression? But I've seen very aggressive females, as well. And even some female fish that were aggressive. So so I hope that answered your question, Gabriel. It's sort of a no answer, but maybe James or Josh, if you're on, or if someone else knows, what are the first signs of a male eye biter? And Aquador Deep, thank you so much for that. I noticed that. And Aquaballs, he offered me some of his Compressiceps orange, and but Aquaballs, I just don't know where I would put that, a Compressicep. I appreciate the offer. I just don't know where I would put them in the scheme of things. I just think that the cichlids that I have might be a little bit overly aggressive for them. But I appreciate that. That's very nice of you. My peeps, and I think I talked about this last time. Somebody, he said, an idiot bought tinfoil barbs, then they got too big, gave them to me. What can I put them with? I'm not an expert on tinfoil barbs. Do you folks know what tinfoil barbs are compatible with? They can get very large, right? And I've seen people mix them with cichlids. I mean, that's not something I necessarily would do, but I've seen people do it. I've seen people mix them with arowanas and other large fish. I think they're very active. They move around a lot. They're not a fish that you would necessarily put with a very calm fish like a discus necessarily. But I'm not really sure what you would put with tinfoils. They can be pretty large if I understand correctly. I love the red hook, these red hook barbs, the big tinfoil barbs. Those are very pretty. Andrew Jones, oh, he was talking about the caramel popcorn. I had these caramel popcorn horns. Someone asked if I was losing weight. I told him that's not going to be possible because of all the caramel popcorn that people gave me, and the horns were this big. And he said the caramel popcorn horn can be a giveaway item. Andrew, I have bad news. All the caramel popcorn is gone. I don't know where it went. I have no idea. It just disappeared. Cichlid Central. Are those cichlids behind you fully grown? No. That Venusis can put on 3 or 4 more inches. That eye biter could probably grow another inch or 2. The Malawi trout in here, I've heard stories of 19-inch Malawi trouts. So these fish all can grow more. And I'm going to reach a point in my fish keeping where I'm going to have to either upgrade to a 300 plus, an 8 or 10 foot across tank, or I'm going to have to switch over into a different kind of fish. Because just ethically, it's not going to be the right thing to have fish that large in a 6-foot tank. This is 6 feet across, and so putting a fish that's 15 to 20 inches in a 6-foot across tank, that would be like you and me living in a 10 by 10. It would be like you and me being in prison, basically. So, I mean, it's definitely not a good quality of life. So I'm headed for some major decisions, and those major decisions will probably coincide with my family relocating to Nashville. We've decided pretty much we're going to be leaving Southern California and going to Nashville. At that time, I may do a massive sell-off and then start a brand new tank down in Nashville. And have an actual dedicated fish room. and I'll probably end up with something that is 8 to 10 feet across. That would be, but I'm interested in rainbows. I'm interested in getting a discus tank going again, and even a planted community tank with a lot of shrimp and neons and things like that. I'd love to do that too. So I'd like to set up a tank where the shrimp, the snails, and the catfish and the plants are doing the heavy lifting on the filtration, and that would be a very cool tank, and just to see how far I can push it without having a lot of filtration going on, just having the plant be an enclosed ecosystem that is sort of self-regulating. I think that would be kind of interesting as an experiment. Jamie saying, Aman, I want a 150-gallon tank for Christmas. Jamie, if you're on the live stream now, did you get that 150 for Christmas? I hope you did. And if not, let me know. I'll write a note to your family. I'll tell them just how neglectful they were this last Christmas and how they need to appreciate you a lot more. I did get some lights. The lights I have on right now are these large lights. I don't know if you can even see a reflection of them maybe. And I got those for Christmas as sort of a YouTuber gift from the family, in particular my wife, which is very nice of her. I did not get a 300-gallon tank, which was on my list. Simon Patel is stirring up my Caribbean Sea sand substrate when doing a water change okay. If you have a sand substrate, every other water change, I rake the substrate. So I take the back handle of a scrub brush. I have one of those long scrub brushes that for cleaning the inside of the glass. I take the back of that and I just run rows up and down the sand, and supposedly that's supposed to release the buildup of any bad gas. And you should rake it. I don't rake it all the time, and I also have power heads, and I position the output of the fluval with the black sand substrate so that it sweeps. It's constantly sweeping the substrate, so it's suspending the particles, so they're going into the filter or onto the sponge pre-filter. So give it a rake. I don't think you have to do it every time. I don't think you have to do that. Hey, it looks like we broke 100. Thank you to all of you on the stream and those of you who shared the stream. 104, I think that's the highest ever. Thank you so much. That makes me feel great. And I'm glad I'm reaching all of you. Let's see here. Jamie says, I have a back scratcher for stirring up the aragonite in my tank. That's a great idea. Back scratcher. Dual purpose. Scratch your back, stir up your sand. That's great. You can buy those. Go to Chinatown. If you have a Chinatown, they have the best back scratchers. 446 pack when setting up new tank after your cycle is complete. How long would you quarantine new arrivals in a smaller tank? 2 weeks or 30 days? Somebody pointed out to me that the word quarantine comes from the word quad, and so I use 4 weeks. It may have originally meant 4 months. I use 4 weeks, and that's just been my rule of thumb. If I ever add fish to the quarantine tank, when I'm doing quarantine, I restart the clock, so the whole clock starts. So even though the fish that were in quarantine were in there for 3 weeks, they're going to stay another 4 weeks if I happen to buy a fish and add them. And so, I would. Now, if you just set your tank up, and you have no fish in it, but it's cycled, and you think it's safe, you don't need to have a quarantine tank, right? I hope we understand each other. You can put all the new fish right into your new tank because that's going to act as your quarantine tank. Now, after those fish have settled in, you go and buy some new fish. Yeah, quarantine those new fish. And I would suggest a minimum of 4 weeks. The biggest disease catastrophe I've ever had as a fish keeper occurred because I violated my own quarantine policy and got a little rushed. And I paid a heavy price, a price of about 50% fish loss. I lost 50% of my stock because I imported Colomaris that I picked up from a local fish store whose name I will not share with you. So let's go back over the comments here and see if there's anything that jumps out before we end off. And I want to thank all of you that are on here. And let's see here. Zaid Adams from South Africa, hello. All right, South Africa. It amazes me that we can reach people all over the world with these live streams. And let's see here if there's a question that I want to pick up here. Thank you, Candi, for sharing those video links from my most recent videos. Candi Overholz, for those of you who came in late, it was Candi's birthday, I believe, on Friday. And she turned, I think we established that she turned 27, and she's looking great. SoySki, hi Ben, do you see Seachem Cichlid Trace? What's the difference between Trace and Cichlid Salt? SoySki, I'm not sure what the difference is between Seachem Trace and the Cichlid Malawi Sea Salt. They might be very, very similar. They might be very similar. So I'm not really sure what, if there is, I'd have to go online and do a label-to-label comparison. Just go ahead and do a split screen, bring them both up, enlarge the labels and take a look. And let's see here. Jose Fernandez wanted to know if Seachem Prime is the same as API Quick Start. Do they serve a different purpose? API Quick Start, I believe, is bacteria loaded, so that you can get your beneficial bacteria going. It is a little bit like Fritz Turbo, or so you have different products like Tim. I think Tim's has a product. There are products that are loaded with beneficial bacteria, and they're designed primarily to jumpstart your tank. I've used some of these products in the past. I found that they were okay. I still had to usually wait a month no matter what I do. I usually have to wait a month before I start getting a zero ammonia, zero nitrite, and some indications of nitrate. So I'm not really sure about these jumpstart products, but that's what API Quick Start is. It's a bacterial jumpstart. Prime. Now you get into the area of water conditioners, things that you would add to your tank when you're adding water or you're setting up a tank, and they neutralize chlorine and nitrates and things of that nature, so that they're not harmful to the fish. So you have two different products going on there for different purposes. Let's see there. Let's see here. Kevin Green made a comment about quarantine. Now, I will say something in full disclosure. I have had situations like with the fish I picked up from Live Fish Direct, where I did a direct ad. You may have a fish provider who quarantines their fish for a very long time and is very conscientious about providing fish, but sometimes something that's laying dormant in the fish will become active when the fish is under stress because of having to be shipped to you or something like that. But I did add some fish from Live Fish Direct to the tank behind me, and thank God everything worked out fine. There was no problem, and the fish I picked up from Live Fish Direct they're beautiful, including. Let me see if you can see him. I've got a guy back here that is called a fire hap, and he's in here somewhere. The fire hap, absolutely gorgeous fish, and the red empress, gorgeous fish. We'd love to hear more about Jackson. William Jansen wants to hear more about Jackson. Jackson is a 1-year-old beagle pup, tricolor. He's gorgeous. Maybe I'll show him to you in one of my videos. He's not fixed. And my mother-in-law, when he came in, the first thing she did was make a comment about him not being fixed. A comment that I will not repeat. But anyway, I'll show him in one of my videos at some point. Let's see here. Francie Arroyo, thank you for that super chat. Very appreciated. And Soren Albegard, thank you for that super chat. Danny Hoogenboom, thank you for the super chat. Donald Fish Vibes. He made a comment. Donald Fish Vibes said, Ben, can you imagine YouTube denying you access to your collection of free videos, but for a fee? It's just a change of policy required by them. This is a risk, and this is a risk that you take in being on a regulated platform. They can make a policy change, and you as a YouTuber have no choice but to abide by those policies. And if they all of a sudden issue a policy that nothing older than 6 months can stay on, or nothing, something arbitrary, they can change it just like that. We have a law coming across in AB 5, I think, in California, that's going to change anybody who's an independent contractor. You're a Lyft driver, Uber driver, you're a record, you're a musician who goes from venue to venue, you're an athlete that goes from venue to venue, and you're independently contracting on a 1099. This law is going to impact all of these people in ways that are very, very destructive to what they do for a living. And I'm going to be, so when you are working in somebody else's domain, you're going to be subject to their laws, and sometimes those laws can be arbitrary. Now, if you've exceeded a certain number of subs, I believe that they're going to be very careful with people that have 10,000 or more subs. Very careful with people over 50, 100,000, 500, a million subs. They're not going to come in and do something arbitrary that's going to piss those people off, because they can be very vocal, and it could really just really backfire on YouTube. So I don't think that they'll do something like that, but who knows? I've seen crazy things happen in this world, and all of a sudden here you are, you've built up this side hustle, this YouTube channel that you love, and it's making you some money, and all of a sudden it's not making you money. And, that could happen. It could happen. I guess it could. I mean, your local government, and if it's going to happen anywhere, it's going to happen in California, your local government could come in and say, oh, if you've got a side hustle, any side hustle, including being a YouTuber, you've got to pay this fee to the state of California, and you've got to pay your Wi-Fi provider this, or, that kind of stuff can happen. And one of the reasons I'm going to be relocating eventually to Nashville is because I'm really tired of being so heavily over-regulated. Let's see here. My peeps, someone wanted me to take this page of fishing. My peeps, somebody wanted me to take this betta fish. I didn't, because it looks like it has a slight white film. Anyone know what this is? I would not, unless I had a quarantine tank all set up and I was ready to start a regimen of, which can be expensive, a regimen of meds, I would not take a fish like that, or I would just give that person advice on how to cure that fish, unless you want to do them a favor and take it on, put it into a hospital tank, and go ahead and do the medicating process with that fish. Otherwise, you could end up with a real problem. And GP, Gurvinder Parmar, gallons per hour is a big thing in the hobby. People think they need 10 times turnover. I like to stay within 5 and 10. I like to stay within 5 and 10 times turnover of my total water volume. I have a 150 with about 30 gallons in the sump, right? So it's about 180 gallons of water. So, you know, I mean, technically I need, what, 1,800 gallons per hour of turnover. I have a pump that's rated at over 1,000 gallons per hour on the sump. And I have a Sun 704B that is honestly pumping maybe about 300 gallons per hour. So I don't know, when you figure in the pressure loss due to head pressure and everything else, I'm probably somewhere around five times turnover maybe. Let's see here. Okay. I think what I'm going to have to do, because we're running high, let me see. My first seed, how do you feel what about pot scrubbers for media, thinking about stacking a hang-on back instead of stock sponges, AC Aqua Clear 110. I've heard great things about those pot scrubbers. If you look at Half Man, Half Cichlid, Half Man, Half Cichlid has a massive sump, that he custom built that is filtering a 500 or 550 gallon cichlid tank. One chamber of his sump is all pot scrubbers, and he loves it. And anything that will grow, that has surface area, will grow beneficial bacteria. How much surface area do you need? Do you need 10,000 square miles? I don't know. I don't think so. I think that the pot scrubbers would probably be great. What didn't Corey make a joke one time over at the Aquarium Co-op? Make a joke about who was it that said you could use gym socks? So, okay, let me see. Robert Johnson, I would like to get some snails to feed my clown loaches, but I want to treat the snails for parasites. Any suggestions? Well, I imagine something like if you wanted to. I personally am not familiar with parasites being an issue with snails, but if it is a concern, I'm assuming you could probably just do a general cure, an API general cure in a tank, in a quarantine tank for about a month or so, and then add them to your main tank. I guess you could do something like that. I've never heard people talking about parasites being transferred over with snails. I'm not sure about that one. If you know something about that and you're on the stream, go ahead and chime in. Do you know something about parasites coming in with snails? I don't know about that. I can't put snails here because these cichlids would just immediately tear them apart. And so I wouldn't put them in with cichlids. I do know that clown loaches love to munch on them. And I think, don't puffers like snails too? I think puffers like to just crunch. They just like to crunch stuff. They would probably love that caramel corn I had. Let me see here. My first seed. Would you buy a Sun again? I hear nothing but horror stories, even with the new 5000. My first seed, I can only talk from my personal experience. I've had two Sun 302Bs running on the 60-gallon flawlessly for about 5 years. They don't make a sound. They push a lot of water. They work perfectly. I have a 704B running on this tank here, perfectly quiet. No problems. The UV light has not melted anything inside of the, I run it on weekends, the UV light. It's quiet, doesn't leak. All I can tell you is my Suns have had no problem. So how often is that a problem with the unit? How often is it a problem in the way it was set up? I have a playlist of setting up canister filters. And I think I have one video that's pretty famous. It's called "Throw That Sun in the Trash," And I think that the title was a little bit of a clickbait, and it got a lot of people who hate Sun and who love Sun clicking on the video. But in the end, I said that I liked it. I liked the canister. It moves a lot of water. It's quiet, and I haven't had any problems with it. So, you know, sometimes it's the way it's set up correctly. I do give tips. Don't overfill your baskets because they won't be seated correctly, so you'll get rattling. When you cut your hoses, make sure the cuts are perfectly straight, perfectly perpendicular, perfectly straight at a right angle, and pushed all the way in before you clamp it down. Be real careful with the latch that turns off the water. Don't push it too hard or too fast because it'll break. Be sure it's on a perfectly flat surface. Be sure that the impeller is seated correctly and the cover, the housing, the impeller housing cover is snapped into place, turned until you get a snap. If you don't get that, that impeller is going to rattle. You're going to hear noise. So I give a lot of tips in that playlist about how to make sure that Sun is going to run right. Get that O-ring and get a little bit of food grade silicone lubricant and lubricate the O-rings and then put them back in correctly. So is it Sun or is it user error? Probably a combination of both. And I notice a lot of international folks are on. Glasgow, Scotland. Hey, George. Novanka from the Netherlands. Okay. And Alan S. Flukes and snails is a story you hear. Something about the snails as a host in the life cycle, I guess, of flukes. So yeah, you definitely don't want to get flukes. Flukes get on your fish, you can have a disaster, especially as they build up along the gill plates and actually suffocate your fish. So on that cheery note, I think we'll go ahead and end off today's live stream. Hey folks, I love you. Thank you so much for taking me up over 100. What a great way to end off. And I think I will be doing a live stream next week as well. Be sure to tune in. Be sure to share the live streams with your friends. Candi, again, happy birthday, sweetie. You're the best. Thank you to Dennis. Thank you to Denny. Rudell, I call him Denny and Dennis. Thank you, Kevin Green. Thank you for making it. I have the best moderators on YouTube. There's no doubt about that. I also have the best viewers. You guys are the best. You are very, very appreciated. Thank you to my super chatters. Thank you to everybody who was drinking today out of one of these cups. You are appreciated, or wearing one of the t-shirts. I appreciate you buying the swag and supporting the channel. Okay? Merry Christmas again to everybody. Happy holidays and a happy new year. Be safe. Have a fun new year. And I hope all of you have a best New Year's ever. And I hope your 2020 is the best year of your life. Okay? I mean that sincerely. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.